Good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to.
Speak way into
All right, I'll get right here. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to have everybody back together, and first time AHAC has met in person like this in a long time. So it's good to see everybody. I'm Andy Barnett. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. I'd like to welcome you to our December 4th, 2025 hybrid meeting. All board members and staff are participating in a hybrid format to help our audience follow along. I'll go through each portion of the agenda aloud as we move from one section to the next. We're streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, or you can watch the live stream on the city's YouTube channel. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. For those of you with us today, thank you for joining us. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and listen or comment live. To call in and listen to the meeting, please dial 855-925-2801 and enter the meeting code 7663. And follow the prompts to join the live speaker queue. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, if you'd like to sign up to speak, you will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. Before we get started with our roll call, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone why we are here. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee exists to consider affordable housing policy issues and advise city leadership about these policies and to develop concrete action steps to implement the highest priorities of the affordable housing plan and to update that plan as appropriate over time, which we did just a little while ago, and to advise city leadership and staff regarding the affordable housing priorities for the investment of city-controlled funds. Currently, four recovery boards are meeting to help guide the city through recovery, and advisory boards are not meeting except in situations where they are assigned work by city council, a council committee, or a department director. In our case, the Housing and Community Development Committee concurred with the Community and Economic Development Director that AHAC should hold special meetings in regard to developing a home repair policy, reviewing any changes to the Housing Trust Fund policy. So with that, I will now introduce all the committee members and staff. For members participating remotely, please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking and unmute your microphone when you would like to speak. Board members and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Alvarez Anthony. Alvarez Abernathy. Good grief, I've forgotten everybody's name. Alvarez, could you come off mute and say hello?
He might be frozen.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll catch Alvarez in just a minute. Maybe he can log back in. Scott Adams.
Hi, good morning.
David Bartholomew.
Good morning.
Jane Kristen.
Good morning.
Chris Day. Paul Heathman.
Good morning.
Tara Irby.
Good morning.
Brian Methvin.
Good morning.
Nuena Smith.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Nuena. Stuart Zeiden.
Hello.
And then for staff, Sasha Fertinsky,
Good morning.
Logan Smith. Nikki Reed, our CEE director, is here in the room, and Janice Ashley, the deputy city attorney, is just walking in. Good morning, Janice. Alvarez, were you able to log back in? Are you with us today? All right, he's just coming back on. Alvarez, can you come off mute and?
Yes, I'm apologize. I had some technical difficulties, but I'm back here. Thank you.
All right, good deal. So we are here and ready to go. Our first agenda item will be to adopt the minutes from our most recent meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Scott, and a second.
Second.
Okay, and because we're hybrid, we're going to have to do a full roll call vote. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye when I call your name, and any opposed with a nay. All right. Morning, Chris. All right, so voting on to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Alvarez, Abernathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Scott Adams,
Aye.
David Bartholomew,
Aye.
Jane Kristen.
Aye.
Hey. Aye. Paul Heathman,
Yay.
Tara Irby,
Aye.
Brian Methvin,
Aye.
Duana Smith,
Aye.
Stuart Zeiger,
Aye.
Andy Barnett, I'm aye, and that covers it. All right. Okay, so moving on to our second agenda item, adopting the rules of procedure. I think folks received the rules of procedure in your packet for this meeting. They've been amended slightly. Sasha, do you want to?
Sure. So just so everybody knows, all boards are being asked to adopt this kind of uniform rules of procedure across the city. All the recovery boards are doing it. And Janice reviewed them, and the one change I made, and I can actually pull it up. The only change I made from what I put in the folder was to add the membership that you all had in your last rules of procedure. So it says, membership on the committee will consist of 13 members appointed by city council. Council will seek members with housing experience, such as a nonprofit developer of affordable housing, a for-profit housing developer, affordable housing advocate, architect, real estate agent, neighborhood association representative, resident of affordable housing, representative of the housing authority, representative of a private philanthropic community, a banker or lender with loan and or commercial expertise, and a senior staff member from the Housing Authority of the City of Asheville. Those are not set seats, they're just kind of suggestions of here's what you should be looking for. So,
And those were adopted in a resolution when this board has long had rules of procedure. They're good rules of procedure, but again, as Sasha said, there are new recovery boards that have no rules of procedure, so it's trying to get to a more uniform. So for those boards who have had something and already, we just sort of combine the two. And as Sasha and I discussed this, it was really important to your particular board because this board had asked for that kind of representation and it was approved.
That's great. Thank you for doing that. We like to know that we're following the rules. Any further questions on the rules of procedure or discussions?
No, it's just my understanding that it was, really just formalizing and standardizing across all boards, including the new ones. So I think it's a good idea.
But if there are new members to this board that maybe had questions about how rules work, but I think these are members that have been on this board for a while.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no further questions on the rules of procedure, I will entertain a motion to approve those as the guiding document for.
I make the motion to approve those rules and procedures.
All right, thank you, Brian. Is second? Somebody like to make a second?
I'll second.
All right, Scott. So we're going to do the roll call again. I'm going to get real good at saying people's names. So again, the motion is to approve the rules of procedure as presented with the amendment that Sasha described to incorporate the makeup of the committee that was in our prior rules for this group. So you can come off mute and indicate that you are in favor of that motion with an aye or opposed nay. Alvarez.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
David. David stepped out. All right. Jane.
I.
Chris.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Tara.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Nuena.
I.
Stuart.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. All right. Look at us, 2 things done. Okay, we don't actually need to do the next thing that's on here. Great. Well, we can move on then. I want to just, we covered this a little bit in the introduction of the meeting. I wanted to just share a little bit about the context of the work that we are doing right now as a committee. Yeah. Oh, we do have to do that. Well, okay. This looked like that looked like a cut and paste from yesterday's meetings.
It is, but it's still the same.
So I've forgotten that we had to do that. All right, we have to do officer elections. I was hoping we could. So let's do that then.
And I'll just, if I can just kick it off a little bit, if that's okay. So again, all boards, you all haven't had an officer election in well over a year. So I think probably in January of '24, maybe. So since we're almost to January 26, and it just seemed like it was the time to do it. I think all boards are doing this if they meet. So
Okay.
that's all.
All right. So.
And if you all need more time to consider,
Yeah.
we could push it off a month or something, or 2 months.
Let's see how the discussion goes, and so I will open the floor to any nominations or discussions about the position of chair or vice chair for the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are those the only 2 positions available? The officer elections are those chair and vice chair, are those positions that are open for selection, or there are other ones, or just those 2?
Yeah, those are the only positions on this committee,
Okay,
other than member.
right. Okay, I'm looking at the current board members. Okay, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yep.
Well, this is a stimulating discussion.
It's great, it's great. Somebody break the ice. Are we going to do,
So
Wow.
I would like to place Andy Barnett's name and nominate to be chair of the committee.
okay, so we have a nomination on the floor. Any other candidates for nomination for chair? No, Scott, you were,
I was going to second that nomination.
okay. We just make sure that we're not leaving anybody else out who wants to get their hat in the ring. Right. Okay, then we will, do we need to, yeah, Brian, you want to restate that as a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion to nominate Andy Barnett to be chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
Okay. Now, Scott,
And I will second that nomination.
then let's do the roll call. Alvarez.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
David. Jane.
I.
Chris.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Tara.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Nuena.
Congratulations, Andy. I.
Stuart.
Aye.
All right, and I'm an aye as well. Okay, so now we're talking about vice chair. Anybody want to put a nomination on the floor for vice chair?
You can nominate yourself. I know that's sometimes awkward, but people can nominate themselves, or other boards have been doing that, or just, if there are a couple people interested, explaining why they would like to.
Vice Chair?
I would make like to make a request to nominate Jane Kristen for vice chair.
Okay. Any other nominations that we're gonna?
I would second.
Can you
Jane's nomination.
Can you tell me the name of the gentleman who was the vice chair before?
Brian Methvin?
I would like to nominate Brian Method as the vice chair, please.
Okay. Okay, so we have two nominations on the floor, Brian and Jane. Anyone else like to be considered?
Can you check with Jane if she's?
Yeah, I'll do that in just a second. Jane, are you willing to be considered for nomination?
Not at this time. I guess just so the board knows, I just had, we just welcomed our first child into the world, so little busy.
Okay.
That is completely understandable, and congratulations.
Congratulations, Jane.
Thank you very much.
Brian, are you willing to serve?
If there are no other nominations, I'll serve.
I'll second Brian.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second on Brian Methvin for vice chair. Any other discussion? All right, we'll move to a roll call vote. Alvarez.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
David. Aye. Jane.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye. You guys got like the last year off, so this is just, let's be clear what's really happening. All right,
Yeah.
aye.
Commentary. Tara.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Nuena.
Congratulations, Brian. Aye.
Stuart. And I'm an aye as well. Okay. There, now, did we do all the business we needed to do? Okay, so we can get into what we are actually here for. As I mentioned earlier in the kickoff to this meeting, citizen advisory boards like AHAC have been asked to work solely on specific projects as directed by council to create more space for for Helene recovery boards to work. And I want to thank, I know many of you are serving on various Helene recovery boards as well, so I want to thank you for that service. So we have been asked specifically to, at this point, to work on assisting in the creation of a new home repair policy. That was a goal within the affordable housing plan and has been pulled out. If you go again back to the charter of this committee, we exist to kind of create concrete action around the highest priority areas of the affordable housing plan, and this is some concrete action around a very high priority topic. So we are very much in line with what we're doing, but following kind of in this new mode of working in support of staff and HCD around a very specific thing. Given that, as we work together, I'm going to try to really help to make sure that we're focused on that topic and that topic alone. And I know sometimes this committee can get a little bit far-reaching, and we have a lot of folks who are really passionate about housing, and housing is certainly one of those things that kind of ties a lot of things together, very connected sort of topic. But we're going to try to stay really focused on the home repair policy and program, really with the idea of trying to get to a program that that can be approved and implemented successfully, right? So I can think about times during the course of my time serving on AHAC where we worked on something that, you know, we tried so hard to make it perfect that it didn't actually ever get done. And so my goal would be to figure out how we can make sure that this not only becomes a great topic to discuss and debate and dream about, but something that we can actually turn into real actionable improvement in the lives of our neighbors in the city of Asheville who are in need of home repair. So I'm going to turn this over to Sasha in just a second. I want to just, as I was thinking about this charge, it's a little bit of a switch for us to be thinking about housing adequacy versus housing affordability, right? So we're the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and now all of a sudden we're talking about home repair, which is not necessarily an affordability topic. It's really about the condition and quality of homes in our community. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of drew that connection back to affordability, which we did in the Affordable Housing Plan. But we really see this kind of in two ways. One is, in many cases, the most affordable housing option for you is the home you already reside in. And if that becomes not a healthy and safe place for folks to live due to unmet maintenance needs or to changes over time, kind of mobility and accessibility issues, then we're sort of losing that piece of affordability for that buyer. The other the other side of this affordability housing adequacy issue is, housing quality is one of the first trade-offs that people make in their search for housing when affordable, decent quality housing isn't available to them. And so this is finding ways to preserve the quality of our housing stock is a direct way of preserving affordability. And so I just wanted to make that connection because as I was thinking about it, we haven't really, this is a new kind of topic, a new area for us to move into this discussion around housing quality. So why home repair? If we think about this, again, one point is that affordability piece. I think the other issue that's central when we think about home repair is sort of health and public health and the increased risk of both things like respiratory illness around that come with poor quality housing, increased fall and injury risk, accessibility. Those kinds of strategies are really tied very closely to housing quality, and then housing stability and neighborhood stability, and the potential for home repair to serve as a neighborhood and housing stability or an anti-displacement strategy. So if we can keep people in the homes in the neighborhoods where they already have roots and are connected, then we're slowing down the potential pace for displacement. We also know that investing in those properties means that they're retaining value and more likely to, if those homes transfer, to be able to transfer from, one owner-occupant to another owner-occupant, or, kind of avoid that cycle of, property decline, then turning into a speculative market opportunity for folks that might drive up the cost of housing. And so these are really the kind of the reasons that we're honing in on this as a strategy. Again, it's a little bit of a new twist on things that we've talked about. Certainly we talked about it a lot during the Affordable Housing Plan, but since it's been a year since we've talked about this or thought about it, and it is a little bit of a switch, I thought it was worth giving us a little bit of that framing before we got into this work. And so without further, let me tell you just kind of where I'm thinking about, and this may go a slightly different direction, but as Sasha and I have been talking over the course of the last couple of months around like how we would roll this out. We want to spend a little bit of time today looking at the scale of the need around affordable housing or around home repair. We want to take a little bit of a look at sort of where that need is geographically around our city. We'll probably take that up in our next meeting. There's certainly kind of a demographic concentration, so we see how home repair, kind of the burden of poor quality housing falling, most highly among low-income residents, and particularly older homeowners. And so taking a look at sort of that demographic concentration, and then I think another whole area to decide whether it's in scope or out of scope for this policy discussion is the needs for repair and housing quality interventions for low-income tenants. Again, a huge piece there, but a totally different suite of strategies. So that, at least a few of the big topics to suss out as we're thinking about how to do this policy design. So that's sort of the long row as we work toward completing a policy and program. So now, I've talked it over.
I just want to highlight one thing that you said was that if a home deteriorates and then changes hands, it's much more likely to be sold to an investor than it is to be sold to another resident at that point. That's really important.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
Any other discussion before, sorry, just, okay, go.
Yeah, so this, I think we're on the same page, Andy. I put together this slideshow for folks at home. I think Logan will make it so you can hopefully see it. It is also in the folder of materials if you're at a computer, and you can pull it up for yourself as well. So just really quickly, what we'll be talking about is kind of the background. We're just starting this work. We have some data, and then we want to talk to you about key considerations and get your thoughts on where we're headed. The Affordable Housing Plan, just to start there with some background, it had two cross-cutting priorities to help guide our work. And really, we're trying to meet the greatest need in the city. Affordable, and kind of bulleted out, our affordable housing opportunities for households with very low income, so less than 60% of area median income, permanent or long-term affordability requirements, in our programs and our incentives that will make the city more affordable for years to come, and then housing improvements that make more homes accessible for residents and abilities and all ages. And then this is just at the bottom, but it's actually very important, protecting against displacement in all forms. So kind of to your point, Paul, I mean, investing in the homes we have, preserving affordability, and not having people have to move out because of housing quality or other issues. Just some quick, I feel like I'm really loud. So some quick funding background. In October of 2024, just after the storm, staff identified some funds that had been returned to the city, and we hadn't allocated those yet. It was from a project that didn't happen. And so we went to council, and 1.46 million of that was bond dollars, and we said, well, we started talking to different stakeholders about home repair. So council allocated 1.46 to disaster-related home repair in October of 24. They also took $1 million of that were more general fund dollars and put that towards rental assistance, just so you know. And then in November, we were very blessed that the voters approved the $20 million bond issue. And just as a reminder, bond dollars, I know you all have heard me say this. I feel like I'm echoing, is that? Bond dollars are limited to capital expenditures. So we can't spend them on rental assistance or supportive services or a lot of the things we all would love to support. This summer, I guess, we started talking about how should the new bond dollars be spent. And this was kind of the draft plan that staff put together. We had some listening sessions, and we talked about this in your September meeting, I think, and I know people were not happy that AHAC wasn't meeting at the time. But, so the only final decision that was made was around this $10 million to the WNC Affordable Housing Loan Fund. Staff felt pretty, and I feel pretty strongly that we were going to spend $10 million on affordable multifamily rental any way you cut it. So why not just make that commitment and have self-help in distributing those funds? These other remaining items will go to council as they're ready, but nothing's set in exact stone here. We know there's a high demand for home ownership and a high desire for it. It is very difficult to do. And we do have some organizations in the community that do it well. And so we put in $1 million for home repair here. We still have almost half of that 1.465 that hasn't been allocated to a contract. So we have about 1.7 million right now that we could put towards home repair. Andy was super helpful in pulling together some data, and Andy, I want you to interrupt me anytime you want. So the American Housing Survey is a survey of, housing in the United States. It's not every single state and every city, but, they do a lot of nationwide studies and city studies, which helps us get a barometer for how things are. Like severely inadequate are things like where you don't have heat or electricity or, and then moderately inadequate or, lesser things, than that. But combined, those are both, they're pretty eye-opening lists of things that people need. What it doesn't include are, just as a note, it doesn't include things like lead paint or some other more health-oriented things too. So it's, this is kind of like the very basic physical part. It doesn't include everything that you might think of as healthy housing. So Andy took kind of the rates nationwide and looked at the newest numbers from the Bowen report, from the housing needs assessment, and kind of yielded these numbers. So in Asheville, these are city numbers, the occupied housing units are kind of split evenly between owners and renters, 22,383 units each. Severely inadequate for homeowners, 171 units. Renters, 477 units, severely inadequate. And then moderately inadequate are higher numbers, so 567 for owners and 1257 for renters. So that's an estimate. It could be a lot higher, possibly. Do you want to talk about any interpretations of that?
Yeah, one of the things that I would add to this is just how illustrative this is of the lack of data that we have around the need for home repair and housing quality interventions in general. So it's, we have a lot of data sources that we tend to go to look at affordability and those kinds of things. And even if you look at the housing needs assessments that we've done with the, the Bowen report, they kind of use a proxy number from census data to try to get a sense of the housing adequacy picture. This survey uses a different methodology, which is a little more accurate to the specific kinds of things that show up as the housing problems that people live with. Like, they'll ask questions like, have you gone, more than 24 hours without working heat? How many times in the last 12 months did you experience, non-working plumbing? So, they're really drilling into those livability issues, but it's kind of on a national level sample. So we're always kind of backing into this data, and so I did one more pass at this after I shared it with you, Sasha, just looking at the So those numbers are applying the housing adequacy rates nationally just to the total number of households in the city of Asheville. I went back and tried to kind of parse out just what the numbers would look like just with low-income households in the city of Asheville. And so as you see on the slide, the rates for inadequacy are significantly higher for lower-income households than for all households. And so, but again, we're kind of backing into the numbers here, which is, I guess what I would say is these are maybe most helpful to think about as an order of magnitude, right? So if we look at sort of just the low-income homeowners who have repair needs, it's probably somewhere in the 500 household neighborhood. And if we look at just the low-income renters that have housing needs, it's probably somewhere in the 1,000 household number. Just, again, this is more about getting us a scope. And I think one of the things that this says to me is, like, it's a significant problem, but it's also a quantifiable enough of a problem to be able to plan for. Like, it's not just like, we don't know how, like, we can actually, we can actually kind of drill into something. That's been a challenge with the city's existing CDBG repair work. I can remember going and, speaking to council on, with Habitat's proposals around home repair, and they're like, well, kind of basing the need off of the need that we had in our, like the number of households we had in our application pipeline, or, it's been a real work effort to try to pin down a need number. And I think this is about as close as we've gotten. Yep.
Do you all, if we have questions or comments, do you all prefer to wait till the end of the presentation or just going through?
I'm okay.
So I have two quick questions. So the severely inadequate, moderately inadequate, what's the quick working definition of those? I know, at least in the housing report, if you're 30% or 50% of income, those are those working terms. But what's a general indicator between those two?
Yeah, I can send the link to the methodology, but it's basically the more of the
cumulative issues.
Yeah, it's sort of like if you have this issue, if you have this issue, if you have the more of those issues that you have, non-working plumbing, not working heat, leaky roof, like the more of those you have, you tip over from moderately inadequate to severely inadequate.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe also like how persistent the issue is, to one of your questions.
And another question I had, just kind of going to, this is coming from census and it's, coming from a, federal level. Something that has piqued my curiosity recently working with Buncombe County tax parcel data is that within that, huge database, there are two fields in there. There's one for condition of structure and there's one for quality of structure. Now, I'm assuming that's coming from a, tax assessment standpoint, but I've honestly been looking at it for an unrelated work project, but I would be really curious to I guess I'm curious if that's been looked at before as any kind of larger indicator. Obviously, however they rank and quantify condition and or, again, quality. I'm not sure if I've just started delving into it, but condition, and I think it's on a A to F scale, could be perhaps a little bit more robust or local source of data just to get a sense of what's going on where with the housing stock.
That's a great idea. And I can ask my friends in planning if they would help me pull that.
Sure.
And we have a question from Noena online. What's up?
Good morning, everyone. I have a question with, from your numbers, Andy, thank you for that information. It's really good to see. From those numbers, do we know the demographic information, not, just based off race, but, who's living in those homes? Are they seniors? Do we have the zip code information, the socioeconomic statuses? We really need to know who's connected to these numbers so that we can know who's missing and what areas of the city that we need to focus on.
Yeah, that's a great point, Noena, and that's really what I hope we're able to get to in some of our upcoming meetings, is to look at the geographic pattern of housing quality issues and then the demographic. We don't have, but again, this is sort of backing into numbers from national percentages. So it's not giving us anything specific to, you know, a local zip code or much less an actual, you know, household composition. But there's a chance that some of the if that tax data is viable, that could at least get us into a zip code or a census tract, and then we could look at the composition of those census tracts to kind of back into the demographic data that you're talking about that way. One of the other really promising projects that's underway right now, I saw for the first time earlier this week, and I'm hoping I can bring them in. The folks at Poder Emma are doing some work to map housing quality in kind of a door-to-door or phone survey of their community. And so, I mean, at some point to really get to what you're talking about, you know, it would take that kind of like on the ground, you know, drill down at the neighborhood scale. Any other questions? We'll let Sasha keep going. All right.
Okay, great. So just going back to that money that we allocated or council allocated in November of 24, whenever that was, we contracted with Archer, which is the Asheville Regional Coalition for Home Repair. And that's made up of Mountain Housing Opportunities, Habitat, Community Action Opportunities, Poder Emma, and the Asheville Buncombe CLT currently. The contract was for $750,000, and I think it's on track to be fully spent by the first or second quarter of next year. They've been working really hard and ramping up their capacity. And then, as I said before, there's a remaining $715,000. So they send us quarterly reports of how, you know, their progress and what's going on with the program. And so the last quarterly report was September, at the end of September. They are also working in Buncombe County. So the city is just one portion of their work. So it's not like they just are focusing only on the city. So it's
I'm sorry, Sasha, could you go back one slide?
sure.
So we appropriated $1.46 million in October of 2024, and then we only contracted for $750,000 of that to be
Right.
spent by 2026, second quarter? Is that right? So it's,
Yeah, I mean, it takes a while to get things ramped up and get, you know, they've had, you know, they take applications. They've had about 200 applications in the city. You have to assess each household, and you know, there's it's a long process for these.
and this was only directed, going back to the earlier slide, at people for single-family home occupancy, none of the directed at renters.
Correct. For home ownership, disaster-related homeowners.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have that other money to work with. So they, you know, report data every quarter, and just, this is like year-to-date as of September. So this gets to some of the questions that Enwena was asking, at least for people who have gotten repairs. It doesn't really speak to the need out there, but 62% of homeowners were below 50% AMI. 40% of the households were female-headed households. 55% were elderly folks. 5% were in a multi-generational household. 62% were Black or African American, and 31% were white households. And there was one that preferred not to respond.
So the first bullet point begs the question, what were the other 38% of the people? 62% were below 50% AMI.
Oh, I see. The other, they're below 80%. I mean,
All of them were
so the
below.
application, some people apply that don't qualify, right? So some people apply and they're over 80%. Our funding is limited, I should have said that, to people at 80% and below.
So that 62% is of the applicants, not of the people we gave money to.
That's of the people who've actually, their homes were repaired.
Okay.
These are completed jobs, so. Yeah. And so, and actually that 62% breaks down to, like, I feel like half of that are, is below 30% actually, even. I just didn't add that point in here. So,
There was a question?
and Wayna had a question.
I'm sorry, Sasha. I'm still, a little bit stuck on the AMI because I still feel like we are missing those people. Or, we had that assessment about the missing middle, but we're missing the people who need repair. I'm hearing this at all the Buncombe County Land Trust LTRG meetings that people are still not receiving services. So, like, these numbers are like concerning me a little bit.
I'm not sure which part is concerning you. I'm not sure.
The 62, I think, is on 62, 67. I'm sorry, the font is a little blurred for me right now. But yeah. And I think Brian was asking about who qualified, right?
Right. So by our funding rules, our money goes to households at 80% or below of area median income. And so if 100% of these homeowners were all below 80%, and 62% of those groups of those folks who had their home repaired were below 50%. And I'm saying a portion of those were actually below 30% AMI as well. I just didn't add that detail here. So there are people at above 80% of area median income who do have needs, and they're not, that's, by policy, we just generally don't, and I'm not sure of the legal part of that, but, our funding goes, yes. Yeah. So.
Was there a reason that we didn't set the AMI threshold lower? Why did we pick 80%?
I mean,
My understanding is that we have more need in the community than we have money. And we have the people with the least need, the least ability to pay for it themselves, but we don't seem to be getting to all of those people with the little bit of money we have. It seems to be getting spread around. And I'm just wondering if that's truly an equitable way of doing it, particularly since a lot of the people with the lowest AMI are the people that are least plugged into the community to know how to apply, how to find out about applications, how to do the applications. And so the concern is just that, while we're spending the money, we're not really, may not be helping the people who otherwise will never be able to do this because they would never qualify from a credit perspective or an income perspective to get loans or anything else to be able to fund these repairs. So they're the jammed up the most in the community.
We don't really have enough data here. Like, as you mentioned, like, it's a portion below 30%. Like, we're not seeing that here. So I think it's tough to really spread that and, like, understand it from that perspective.
I guess my point is, if we reached every household in the community below 30% AMI that needed a home repair, and we did it, then that's great to move on to the next tranche of people. If we just sort of set it at AMI and took the applicants that come in and start working through them regardless of their AMI level, then you may leave behind a whole swath of the community.
and we can bring back some more information as well. And so, I think the other thing for context that people may or may not know about is the Renew NC program. So this, the federal government gave the state of North Carolina $1.4 billion of CDBG-DR funds, and around $800 million of that is going to home repair. So everybody in the city and the county can apply. The application deadline is almost here, I think, but people can apply for home repairs, and in some cases, people are getting their entire home replaced. So there is some other things happening as well. So it's cloudy. It doesn't necessarily help answer your question. And that is mainly focused, the folks they've been focusing on are at 60% and below. I think tier 1 is that lower income.
One quick question before I know we're moving on. Going back to the 80% AMI question, I know, is there something, I know this is talking about federal funds, but with state law for affordability requirements, is there some, I seem to recall there's something with state law and affordability, I guess, setting 80% AMI as the upper, or it's some standard like that. It's not something we have to delve into now, but I'm just trying to get that larger understanding if that's factoring into that, but it's just an open question.
The bond statutes do set it
Okay.
at 80% AMI and below.
Okay,
So that's where that comes from. But most of when we talk about AMIs does come from HUD world, saying
Gotcha,
what
okay.
is considered. And
That's
I
federally
believe
driven.
in HUD, homeowners could be even higher than that. And
Okay.
sometimes people who are homeowners are a little bit higher for home, what opportunities to buy.
gotcha, thank
It's
you.
not to say that you couldn't set a lower threshold.
Okay,
That's, yeah.
Do you have a slide about the CDBG repair program, like the not DR CDBG repair programs? Okay. So that's the other tool that we've used locally to fund home repair that's not disaster oriented.
Right.
That also has an 80% AMI cap. Chris, I'm gonna jump back to you in just a second, but I think we're hearing two really important things that we need to consider when we're thinking about the policy that we're creating going forward, which is, sort of to Brian's point, how do we prioritize the very low income, and I think I'm also hearing sort of how do we not miss the people who are just above our current qualifying income, but may also have needs. So this is the tension that we felt and talked about a lot in this committee over the years. How do we address both of those things, the critical need for the very low income and these folks that sort of fall through the crack between where our existing subsidy programs cut off and where the market actually works for them. So I think this is a really good thing that we need to think about. I appreciate the conversation today, and I want to point out that this was, one of the reasons that we're working on this policy is to answer just these kinds of questions. This was a program that was launched very quickly as a result of the incredible urgent need following Hurricane Helene. And so, I don't want to be overly critical with this because it was, the city was very responsive to a need and finding a way to get resources out the door before we really had any understanding about, what the scale and scope of the need in the community would be, and who was most impacted and all of those sorts of things. So leaving the flexibility in there was really critical to making sure that this money could start going out as soon as it did. This program launched, I want to say 6 months before the state even started thinking about what their repair program was going to look like or made any kind of commitment to investment. And y'all started moving this out within a few months after the storm. So it was a very early act by the city, and I think the flexibility that they put in there was key. So not to say that our long-term policy going forward that we're working on now needs to mirror that, but those were sort of the background of the choices on that. Chris, you had a question.
I did, just a clarifying question. Did you state the Archer funds are only available for homeowners and not renters?
Right.
And
Yeah, that contract.
I
yeah.
gotcha. The survey, speaking of folks who are in more need, the survey clearly points out that there's an even bigger need for renters. And is there a reason we can't, or is that where you're heading next?
Perfect segue.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so some key considerations and questions, and some of this we've already talked about, but understanding the full picture of the need for home repair in the city, what's been achieved over the past 5 years with, CDBG, steady state is what we call it, just our regular CDBG funding. I'm going to work with our community development staff to get some of that information. And then are there natural demographic or geographic targets for the program? Like, for example, like elderly, would you try to target elderly folks or people within specific neighborhoods? Of of course, all of this is within legal bounds, right? So what we can legally do. And just, I kind of alluded to this a little bit before, but, you know, we've been talking about this program being a part of our overall anti-displacement strategy, really allowing people to stay in their homes. And then a question for you all is, are there other goals that the city should be trying to achieve with this program? So are there other things we should be thinking about as well? And then lastly, should this program address both renters and homeowners? So, and that, yeah, and that's it for now. We could have discussion, and then I've got the next steps. I'll just say this, actually. You know, in January, we'll bring some more data back about geographic distribution of home repairs of CDBG funds. We're hoping, I shouldn't maybe promise this, we're hoping to hear a report from, you know, Poderema and their experience, and I don't know if there's other legacy neighborhoods information there. And then, you know, I'll work with the committee leadership to develop a more detailed work plan. But your conversation today, still to happen, will help direct that as well.
Chris, I want to circle back to your question about the difference in like housing quality interventions for on rental property versus owner occupied property. And David, you feel free to jump in because I feel like you live in this world more than I do. There are a lot of the existing programs that we have around home repair really prohibit seeing those funds invested into investment property, right? So you might have a rental unit that where the occupant is a low-income household, but the actual like asset benefit of improving that property goes to to the property owner who is not a low-income recipient. And so it gets a little bit tricky to make these kind of direct investments. There are a few ways to get around that. And David, this is where you can jump in. I think the theory is that in a functioning rental market, the market will take care of, the market will put pressure. People will, vote with their feet and move to a unit that's better quality, and that will force landlords to maintain the quality of their property. What we run into is, in a market like ours, and unfortunately most markets around the country, the supply is so constrained that that doesn't, that market function doesn't work. In really tight markets like ours, and I've seen two of these things cross my desk just in the last week, folks are hesitant to even take the legal steps that they do have as tenants to enforce the kind of the obligation of the landlord to provide them with a habitable unit, because they're afraid that either they'll be evicted or their rent will go up to a point where they can't afford that. And so the strategies for addressing rental properties are just so much more complex, because a lot of the enforcement action that you might take against a property owner, kind of the stick approach, ends up having an unintended negative consequence on the tenant. The carrot approach doesn't really work because the beneficiary isn't actually a low income resident, and so it just really it's a very, very different animal, which in part is why we see such a big need there. David, you want to?
I think Andy really hit all the points I wanted to hit. Obviously, we at Physical Legal Services, people call us all the time with habitability issues. These home repairs, whether they're talking about moderately or severely, that's illegal for a landlord to do in North Carolina. If there's plumbing, there's no power, then there's an obvious claim against the landlord. The landlord's not permitted to rent something out that doesn't meet those habitability requirements. But like Andy said, many times we are, especially if it's a larger landlord, able to resolve those issues either with legal action or by negotiating for a settlement. But naturally occurring affordable housing, much of that is uninhabitable by the statute. If somebody's able to pay $500 in rent, they come to us and talk to us about, there's a hole in the roof. And so we can get that fixed, but they will not have a chance to stay in a $500 apartment anymore. Like, once that's fixed, it's worth more. And also, generally, the statutes don't permit, or do permit landlords just to not renew a lease for any reason at all. And so the landlords, the tenants are in a really tough position. So I don't want to take it to another policy, but I don't think home repair is where we get at, those statistics. We know that we have a majority, or at least even number of renters in Asheville and Buncombe County, and there are policies that can really help them and give them autonomy, like rental assistance, and improving some of the code enforcements, and mostly in making more affordable units available, and making sure that we're getting all the subsidies that we can so that we're maximizing all that. Home repair, it is an issue, but I don't know how we really address the tenants' issues, at least in Asheville, with that money.
The only thing I would add is I have had conversations in the past with landlords who have voucher holders, right, in their units, and they actually care about affordable housing and they want to do that. And sometimes the need for rehab, it's really rehab, it's not emergency repair. Their need is hundreds of, well over $100,000 or more. And so there's also instances of that which are even more trickier in a way.
I guess from a landlord or property owner perspective, is there any way to, sort of peer into or document their level of need? I think that's kind of the crux of it. If I'm the property owner or landlord, and yes, the money, especially if, I, the property or landlord, are not living there, and I obviously benefit from owning and, renting that space. But yeah, I think it's the issue of, it's easy to sort of, villainize a property owner or landlord, but if there is a legitimate just financial gap there or need, I guess that's kind of the question, is what's the ability or mechanism to, peer into and document their level of need and then perhaps meet that? I don't know. That's...
Yeah. There are some small scale programs in other municipalities that have made low interest repair loans available to property owners in exchange for affordability commitments on the back end, which is could be a promising thing to take a look at. So that gets to that landlord that, to Sasha's point, wants to make wants to do the right thing. Maybe they're financially struggling. We see that a lot with a lot of small landlords who, so giving them access to a, kind of a low-cost financing tool in the same way that we would give a developer access to a, like housing trust fund loan or whatever it might be, low-interest financing in exchange for a commitment to, not increase rent over a certain period of time, or to accept voucher holders or whatever it might be.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I was just going to quickly mention that the city did have that program in the 90s. We had individual home ownership, and we had ones where rental buildings, maybe they were smaller, but 8 units or so, as long as they committed to renting at a certain income level, which gets you around having the need for a voucher because it's already built in. Yeah, that was full rehab, but it was a long time. I think it was about maybe, I don't know how many years, but 20 years affordability. So.
I think there are some other, like maybe Durham and maybe even Charlotte have programs, lending programs with subsidized rates, even forgivable loans, I think, after a period. So it's definitely happening. I think it's successful, or maybe it's too early to tell. I guess there's definitely a need to fix homes that people are living in. It's a humanitarian thing, right? Like, that needs attention. But while I keep an open mind, I can't imagine us spending any money that's going to go to real estate investors, right? Like, that's not going to ever feel good. So I think that if we're spending money in that direction, it's enforcement.
Other questions on this topic or others? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to the hybrid thing. Tara, did you have a comment or a question? Or is there a comment or question in the chat?
Tara stepped off the meeting.
Okay,
Maybe it was to say goodbye.
okay, very good.
I was going to say that one thing I didn't, maybe I kind of forgot about it, but one of the issues, and this is getting down in the weeds a little bit, is around home repair, is how much do you spend per unit? And is it a grant or a loan, right? So federal programs often have these lower amounts, like $15,000, and if the repair is more than that, there's a lien put on the home. Really is, for the contract we have with Archer, recognizing that the severity and the, not forcing Archer agencies to layer a gazillion funding things to avoid the lien, because a lot of people don't want a lien put on their house if they need repair, right? We had a $50,000 limit, which is really high, but that lien level is something that we'll want to talk about, just to give you a heads up.
Is $50,000 really high?
Depends on your shoes, and it's really about the risk of getting a 50. It's really the risk of. It's ringing hard. It's the risk of, it's a grant, and then, the risk of, does that person just turn around and sell their unit? And,
Right.
We want it to be for good use.
No, I just think about like what it costs to have a roof replaced. Is that like 20 grand?
Easy.
25,000? So I mean, if you had water penetrate your roof and you had to replace the roof and repair the water damage, seems like just about anybody who was lien impacted. would
Right,
have
and I think that's why we
$50,000.
did that specifically for the storm, but it's for discussion.
Yeah, no, it's a great
Consideration.
discussion. I think one of the problems that we've gotten caught up with over the course of time is that home repair inflation has gone up tremendously, but our framework for thinking about what we grant people or loan people hasn't changed as much. So, it's we think $50,000 is a lot of money, and it ends up maybe not being.
I think that's a great point of when we're thinking about policy design, is to kind of, I remember that we had this with the fee rebate program when we looked at that a gazillion years ago, where it was the policy had a fixed dollar amount rather than something that sort of had a natural inflationary adjustment into it. And so I think when we're thinking about policy and making recommendations around policy, figuring out ways to keep them, evergreen with inflation adjustments built into the policy mechanism is really, really helpful.
I have two comments about the last two items. The last one, I just want to summarize that at least what I'm hearing is that it sounds to me like this committee believes that it should address both renters and homeowners. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I'm hearing. I certainly feel that way. And the second one is, I think for the second to last item, are there other goals? I think that it would be really good if we could evaluate improved health outcomes after the work is done. I know that adds a layer of complexity, but that's kind of why we want to repair homes, is so that people can live a healthier lifestyle in that home.
Yeah, and a lot of the subrecipients for the CDBG repair programs that we've run over the years have done those kind of follow-up studies, and so it's possible that we can look at that. It's not a required thing, but several of the, most of those organizations are also seeking private funds to leverage the CDBG work, and that kind of outcome measurement is being required there.
One of the things I'm thinking about is some of the invisible, less visible concerns in a house that needs repair, and one couldn't fix all those things that look obvious, the holes in the roof, but maybe one has not addressed black mold or too much moisture.
I would also think one of the policy considerations is just how does this fit into the landscape of home repair from the other programs that are out there, what their standards are. Just so, I think when you look at these things in isolation, you go down sometimes a path that doesn't maximize the use of your money. Because because we have a smaller pool of money than like the state program does, but maybe we should be looking to attack a smaller segment of the problem with that the little bit of money we do have, rather than being just like the state and spreading it out over like everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, and, you know, the county certainly has repair program funding. You know, I think I would caution us to not think so much about exclusively around what sort of the landscape of post-Helene and disaster repair looks like, because, you know, as hard as that is to imagine, you know, like there will come to a point when when those programs have sunset, where the bulk of those, the urgent storm-related repairs have been completed, and the policy that we're trying to design would be, obviously it's coming online while we still have that need in place, but my assumption is that this, if it's successful, becomes a part of the city's ongoing funding priorities, post-disaster recovery, which is, in part why it's landing in this committee rather than in the Housing Recovery Board for discussion. Other thoughts or questions?
Just and I know I was speaking with you just before the storm about, trying to work more on this. Does Archer or some other resource just have like a good summary of what the basic, I guess, ranking criteria are for home repair? For instance, I'm thinking of obviously walls, doors, and windows, and exterior walls, at least in my mind, would have a higher priority than, or at least in terms of, getting to a problem first. Like if you have a leaking roof, that would seem to, have a higher ranking than, okay, I've got a hole in an interior wall. Is there a list somewhere of what the ranking criteria are for home repair?
Maybe let's add to our agenda for an upcoming meeting to meet with some of the existing providers of home repair services, and they can talk through that program, because it really depends a lot. I mean, a lot of it honestly is kind of driven by the felt need of the owner, right? And it's some of the federal programs that fund repair program or repair activities, in an effort to try to get at, the full scope of repair needs of, lead abatement and mold remediation and all of those kinds of things. Right. You end up reaching the per project, cap of funding before you've actually addressed the issue that the homeowner,
cited,
came originally applied for, right? They needed a roof, but to comply with this program, you've got to scrape all the lead off their windows, and and then like you've hit the project cap before you've even replaced the roof.
Yeah,
there's a there's kind of that. It's a little bit of a tug of war to sort of. Stuart, to your point of like, how do you completely serve the need that exists in a home, and how do you, stay within the allowable expenditure?
I guess that also sort of begs another question of sort of a cost benefit or a decision on repair versus obviously repair versus replacement is a quantum leap for someone, but I do know we have some of the oldest housing stock in the state, and going back to that. Tax parcel data, there's a field year built. Again, that's another indicator species of, hey, if you got Asheville had a building boom in the 1920s, here we are 100 years later. It's a conundrum. I mean, I get it. I drive a 15-year-old car that's paid for, so every dollar that I put into it, I get to keep the car versus getting a new one. So, it's a conundrum.
I love that analogy. I'm going to check in with our committee members who are online. Any further thoughts or questions? I don't want to overlook you. And
I think the conversation that we're having is essential. I'm just hoping that we could figure out a way to take care of our community, especially our renters. I definitely know that there are some policy logistics that, renters are one thing and then the owners of the property is another thing, but our renters are our residents and our community members who are suffering right now. And I just really would like to figure out a way that we could make our community whole, however that is.
Yeah. Thanks, Dwayne.
I agree with you, Nwina, and I guess to that point, I wonder if the policy for fixing up owned homes has enough significant in place that our work might be best served working on policy for rentals.
We don't have a policy. We don't have a policy for city funds and home ownership. We were flying by the seat of our pants in October last year.
Okay, so we need to do both.
Yes. I mean, and staff will do the majority of that policy development with your help, right? So, but yes, it would be two different sections of a policy, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andy brought up a good point. We've been dealing with post-Helene related things that are right in front of us. But if we want to have a policy that's lasting, we got to think holistically and go, where is the greatest need in the community? And if the avenue of home repair isn't the right way to reach renters, then maybe we got to think about diverting money into a program that would. But I think to Nwina's point, we just can't ignore these people because that's just not right. And they're so much of a larger segment of the community. I mean, it's 3 times as many people living in severely inadequate housing that are renters than there are homeowners. And yet, being on this board and the Housing Recovery Board, all the attention is to the smallest group of people. And that just does feel right. So I think if we're going to work on longer term policy, that's really where it does need to focus.
I think I heard either Scott or David mention something about enforcement. So I guess that's one potential effort we can help the city with, is to try to figure out what that might look like, to force the landlords to obey the law at the very least.
And and it is an interesting, I guess, enforcement can be a double-edged sword at times of, obviously, you don't want to condone someone living in an uninhabitable situation, but to your point, that may be a tipping point of either an eviction or just a, hard dollars and cents increase to bring it up to the minimum housing standard. So again, it's I'm just saying that out loud, but it is conundrum.
Not all places have a housing code. So not only do we have, North Carolina law about habitability, which I do believe either of those things are going to be considered uninhabitable when we're talking about moderately or severely. But there's also a minimum housing code here, and there is some enforcement. And it is, we have 6 attorneys in Buncombe County who are doing housing cases, and we do these kinds of cases. These are classic legal aid cases, and we do try to discipline bad actor landlords. We investigate them, and we try to get repairs done. And a lot of times it's about a call being made. But as Andy mentioned, the unintended consequences of these kinds of things in the dire situations that people under 30% AMI renters are in Asheville. I don't know how many homeowners there are at 30% AMI, because how have you been able to do that here? And the ones that we have, yes, we need to develop policies. And I don't want to take us off scope, but while we can do more enforcement, I think if we're really trying to help renters, I'm not sure this policy and the thing that we've been tasked with doing is gonna be the best way. We should obviously consider them. We should think about a policy that if we're opening up home repair, that for the first window is available to 0 to 30%, and then over the next window goes up to 50%. Those are ways that we can really target those who are in most need. But I think to try to get at renters through this policy, while not impossible and not something we shouldn't consider, I don't really see it as the best way to do it.
I think the graduated sort of thing where we're digging into deeply affordable earlier seems obvious. I think, I'm not sure though that there are inputs here, like we're specifically talking about, either repairing a landlord's home, or like there's not really an input that feels like it doesn't have a potential to increase rents or displace someone. Like everything you do, you fix up their house, or you give the renter rental assistance, or like, is there an input that you're aware of that helps people that doesn't have a potential outcome that's negative?
Yeah, so these capital projects, like, they are really about helping, people who have already a piece of land. They have a piece of the pie. And I think protecting autonomy of renters, protecting autonomy of people who are in that position, and making sure they have the money to make the best decision they can make. When you talk to somebody who's in that position and you say, well, we can make them repair it, but they're probably not going to renew the lease in February, and they're going to raise the rent in February to where you can't afford it, and they're maybe going to sell it because the only reason they haven't sold it is because it needs severe repair. Well, that, you have to really consider, like, how are you helping that individual? And there are policies, first of all, the larger scale of just creating more affordable housing here, increasing the amount of stock, and this is part of that in preserving. I do think we have I think we probably have higher numbers of houses in need of repair, considering, how expensive it is here, and considering how old our stock is, and all the, anyway, I don't know, that's beyond my expertise. But there are definitely things that we can do to target people, but I'm not sure through this. And then there are restrictions. The bond funding doesn't really go towards assisting. Sasha mentioned that at the beginning. We're limited in some of that, but we do need to consider it, because if we want to work on displacement and keeping people from leaving here, we need to be thinking about how will people be able to stay, and having direct assistance, being able to ride out this midterm recovery into the long-term recovery. Like, it's huge to consider policies that will address that, I think. Rental assistance, number one.
It's very difficult to imagine giving a landlord money to improve a home that it gives them a more valuable asset when we're trying to help the renter out, and they could still turn around and increase rents because the house is nicer now. Like, feels like there's not a lot we can do that's not gonna.
Isn't that the same thing, though, when someone's constructing a building? We're giving them money, but we get a quid pro quo, which is a restriction on the number of units they're gonna keep as an affordable level. So I think we can do it. It's just gotta be attacked the same way we do with new construction.
I think, yeah, you put deed restrictions in place or something, but you can't force them to keep the same tenants.
Right.
To David's point, like, we can't interfere. There's certain things we just can't do. And that'd be like interfering with commerce or something.
But we had the same issue when we rehabbed some of our public housing projects, right? We had to displace tenants in order to reconstruct the units, right? So some of that may be occur. So you have to look at it from the broader perspective of creating and maintaining a stock of affordable housing versus not doing anything because you're paralyzed to help one person.
I'll just say one last thing, like, just with Stuart's last point, I think this is super important. I think so many people in our community need it. Like I mentioned, I think that data is while the best we can get using census data and the Bowen report and trying to come up with something. I think we have more people. But if we're asked to decide where we want to put money, and I think Stuart said, well, maybe we don't want to have all of this money in home repair. And I don't know. That's a very difficult question. But if we want to get at renters, I'm not sure that home repair is where, if we're choosing, which I'm not sure we've been asked to, where do we divide the money? Where do we focus the limited resources that we have as a city? How are we going to spend that money? If you spend it on home repair, you're talking about benefiting people who own homes. And it's a huge need. But that's a decision point, and if we decide to do that and put more money into that, then that money is not going to these other programs. And sometimes it can't, but when it can, that's, I think, we're making a recommendation to HCD, that's, we want to think about that and make sure they know, or that we know what we're doing with this money.
Yeah, I want to just, David, to your point, and I said at the beginning of this meeting that I was going to try to make sure that we stayed focused on what we were doing. Like, it's very easy for us to shift over into thinking about basically what you're saying is a question of bond allocation, right? How much do we put to what strategy? In this case, what the committee's been asked to do is not to weigh in on bond allocation, but to weigh in on the specific considerations of a home repair policy. So, like, I'd love to have that conversation. I think we should have that conversation. Maybe we will, but like for the point of this committee, like let's try to assume that, with where Sasha started, assume that $1 million tranche of the bond is going toward the to support whatever policy design that we're able to assist staff in making.
One question I just thought of, is there a shred of logic in actively funding home repair for homeowners, at least under the logic of if they're not able to stay in their home, a certain percentage of them will probably become renters, and it's all, it's the whole housing ecosystem. It's all, one big sticky wicket. So I guess sort of accepting a lesser evil, or however we're going to look at it in that way of saying, all right, we're doing, this money for home repair for homeowners. And I guess part of the logic of the guys would be, all right, we're keeping you in your home and you're not going to potentially become a renter. And again, not renting or owning is good or bad, but just from a stability standpoint, I think that's part of the logic. And I guess the ease of being able to say, all right, you own your home, here's, this money for this repair, versus it sounds like it's a much more potentially complicated web working with landlords and or property owners. So just a quick bit of teasing out of what I'm hearing.
I guess I just want to note that the last line specifically asks us to address this issue. So I don't know if that's something we might want to do later and not just today, but I totally understand, David, your perspective and the complexity of it all, and at the same time, I have concerns about subsidizing people to stay in substandard housing.
Question says, should this program address both renters and homeowners? And I'm worried that the program could address both homeowners living in their homes and homeowners who have businesses called landlording, right? That, like, we want to help people, but we're not here to help businesses grow based on real estate investment.
Yeah. And we're sort of closing in on our time on this, and I think that this clearly is a topic that we need to look into more. I'm going to go back to, again, that last bullet and the question, and emphasize a slightly different part of that sentence. Should this program address both renters and homeowners? I feel like we know that we, in the interest of the public good, should be addressing the housing quality needs of both renters and homeowners. The question is this program that we're designing something that can do that? Or to David's point, you understanding the constraints that this program right now is conceived to be funded through bond dollars, which have certain restrictions on, the income of households that they serve, that have certain restrictions on the capital, use capital funds. To David's point, if the strategy that really is successful at addressing the housing quality needs of renters is more of a legal strategy that can't be funded through bond dollars, then we need to figure out what that toolkit looks like. But it's not necessarily something that we can do with this program as it's been sort of structured for us to consider right now. So, but I do think we need to take this up, and I would, Janice, I would love to know if you looked at the the program that we were describing from the 90s, if it would even be eligible as a bond use or not, if it, meets that. And you don't have to know that right now, but.
No, I've always wanted to sort of outline it, but I even wonder if it will work now. These were, one I can think of is still in existence in the Grove Park neighborhood. If they hadn't renovated that 6-unit apartment, there wouldn't be that affordable housing there. And I think it was targeted to people at 50% of AMI. And I think might be Mountain Housing Opportunities. But I've always thought, but back then, they probably acquired that building for so little. As you say, the costs have gone up so much. I don't know I don't know what a rehab would, even if you were going to go out and acquire properties. But I can work with Sasha and just outline what it was. I just know about it because I've been here 15 years, and we didn't have an active program, but they come up for renewal, or they wanted to extend their subsidy a little longer, and so they committed to that. So it's interesting.
That was federal money.
That was federal money, but it didn't mean that you couldn't use it for something else.
Yeah.
This is a point of information.
Okay. I have made a long list of things that we need to talk about going forward, and, to really get to a policy that we feel good about. This has been a great discussion. It's so good to have the band back together. So and it's nice to be able to have a hybrid meeting. But I think with that, we're going to leave this topic and shift to any next steps for future meetings. We've outlined a few of these. We'll try to put together an agenda for the meetings going forward that surface a little more detail in each one of these topics, so that we can have a constructive discussion of kind of point by point around the affordability ranges, the kind of demographic and geographic pictures, this question around renters versus homeowners, what the funding environment looks like, what the sort of programmatic environment looks like with the providers who are already working in this space. So we've got plenty of meetings, plenty of topics for plenty of meetings. Any other next steps that you want me to capture coming out of this meeting for our next?
Is the mandate from the council that we meet once a month?
No.
Is that our choice?
So it's special meeting. These are special meetings, so they're not like your regular monthly meetings. And that's really just a technical thing. I think, we had a discussion a couple months ago with you all, back in September, I think, about are we meeting every other month or every month? And I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, it'd be every other month, but at the same time, we want to get this done. So I don't want to commit either way. But I think we were trying to set it up so that it was meeting opposite of the Housing Recovery Board. And it just puts a burden on those who are on both. And I think and Scott is on the economic one, and so 3 folks, I think, from here are on the Housing Recovery Board. And they just, every other month. So I think we would meet in January, which is opposite their meeting, and just see where we'll work on a work plan and see where we go from there. So I guess I'm asking for your forbearance to figure that out.
Is there a time frame that HCD would like to see a policy recommendation back?
No, they didn't specify that. I think from what we know, it would be great to have it done before the end of the fiscal year, like next June. And maybe even earlier if possible, just to fund the organizations that are doing this work. Because, but.
Are they at a standstill until we do this?
No, that's not my impression.
No, this is a completely new pool of money. So at least my understanding right now is that CDBG funds that could be allocated for repairs would still be available to these organizations. The county's programs would still be available. The disaster-specific funds that the city's already committed, that $1.4 million that Sasha mentioned, is potentially available. That's the second tranche of that funding. So, this is creating another source of funds for this type of work that hasn't previously existed. All right. So we'll meet in January, will be our next meeting, and we'll set a specific
If
date.
January 8th works, 7th or 8th? Thursday? Must be the 8th.
We're going to continue to be hybrid as well.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Because the 1st is the first Thursday of the month. We're not going to meet on New Year's Day, so that'd be the 8th.
Yeah.
City's not open. Does that work for folks?
The 8th Thursday.
Open? Yep.
I'll be hybrid, but it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to get us back on our kind of, like, close to our old meeting schedule, just because at least it's already blocked out on my calendar. So.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. So then I think we are moving to public comment. Do we have any public comment that came in before the meeting?
Did not get any emails or voicemails.
Okay. Do we have any, there's no one in the queue. Would either of our two guests in person like to make public comment? Okay. Very good. Then seeing that there is no public comment, we can move to adjourn. If we'd like to.
Can I real quickly introduce Carly Gillingham, who's one of the people in the audience. She's a new attorney. Well, she's been with us since April, and I'm so happy to have another attorney who wants to work on housing and community development, because there's always a lot of work to do. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. All right. If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.